Hey guys, it's Demi from Demi's Divine Designs, and today we will be working on another swoon pattern. This pattern I have had my eye on for a while, but I've been a little intimidated with it just because it looks so fancy and elegant, and I thought it was going to be way harder than it was. It wasn't hard. So we are going to hop into it. Today we are making the Carter by Swoon, and that looks like this. So let's get started. For this bag, we're going to be using these 3 different fabrics for the different section in the bag. The exterior section that has the main flap, the front, and the back panel, I'm going to be using this beautiful Harry Potter printed cotton lycra that I got from either Backstitch Fabrics or Wonderground Fabrics. I always mix those two up, but one of those stores, you guys had this and I bought it, so The pattern recommends that you have a 1/4 yard of this fabric. And since I am using cotton lycra, we are going to beef it up to make it so that then it's going to be easier to work with and it's going to be sturdy for our exterior of the bag. For our exterior accent fabric, this is going to be the side panels, the handles, the straps, all of the fancy stuff. We're going to be using this beautiful hollow scaly textured vinyl that I got from Joann's, I want to say about a year ago. I'm not sure if they still have it. Check your Joann's because this is really cool. The pattern recommends that you have 5/8 of a yard of this fabric. I would suggest get the full yard because this is all that I have left. So keep that in mind when picking out your fabrics and deciding what you want to pair with what. Then for our lining, we're using this beautiful heavy duty cotton fabric. That is going to be for our 4 lining pieces and our zipper pocket piece. Now for this bag, you can add on to it if you want to add another zipper pocket on the inside and if you want to do slip pockets. I would suggest do that in the lining fabric too. I would also suggest getting a yard of this as well, just to make sure that you have that extra. I got 3 yards of this and I still have a ton left, so I think a yard would be plenty. To beef up our fabrics, I'm using 91FF, which is pretty much SF 101, but I'm using the black version. This is just our lightweight interfacing that I'm going to fuse onto the back of my cotton lycra and my regular green cotton as well, just to give it that extra sturdiness. And Fusible Fleece is also very necessary for the flap and the main exterior front and back piece. It helps provide a little cushion and it really looks nice on the bag. So we're using that as well. And these are the only interfacings that you're going to need for the pattern that it recommends. If you want to beef up the bottom piece by getting like some nice sturdy interfacing, do that as well. It's honestly completely up to you how you want to interface your bag, the amount of structure that you want it to have versus the amount of structure you don't want it to have. Keep that in mind when picking these interfacings out. Here is all the hardware and tools that we're going to be using for this bag. You're going to need 2 1-inch rectangle rings, 2 1-inch clasps. I'm using these adorable fancy connectors for the shoulder straps. Then, since I'm making a crossbody strap, I'm also doing a adjustable slider. You're going to need 1 zipper with a zipper pull. The measurements for this zipper is in the pattern, and you do need to cut it to exact size. We're also going to need snaps. We can either do these magnetic rivet snaps, which I get from camsnaps.com. So that comes with the snap part, rivet caps, and the other snap part. So they go like this, and then you'll have the rivet on the back. You can also use these fold snaps that have the prongs. I do have a bunch of these. I just think that would look better. I have my magnetic snap dies, which I also get from CamSnaps. You're going to need a set of rivets. There are a lot of places that you can use rivets in this bag, and I love using rivets, so I have these. I use the 9mm rivets, and I also have my rivet die as well, also from CamSnaps for both of these. Then for your thread, I'm using 45 weight fairy floss thread, which this variegated thread from Wizardry Stitchery is honestly my favorite to work with. It is so pretty and works really well in my machine, and that is a text 45 weight. And since I am using a more industrial machine, I also have that in my bobbin. You're going to need a ton of clips, nice healthy supply. Double-sided tape is very helpful for this pattern. It is not necessary, but it does make certain spots go a lot easier. I also have two different styles of my 1-inch ruler. I have one that you can see really well on dark fabrics and one that you can see really well on light fabrics. So I recommend having those. I also have my hole punch die that I also get from Cam Snaps. I will have the link to Cam Snaps in the description as well. I have my tag that I get from Heartwood and Hide. And then I have my stiletto and seam ripper combo. This is great. You never know when you're going to need it, but you always want to have it near you. And I have two marking utensils. I have a wash away erasable marker. That is helpful. And then I also have my chalk roller, which also makes this a lot easy. There are some marks that we have to do, especially on the front main panel, where this is very helpful. And on to the pieces. Starting with the main accent pieces for the exterior of the bag, we have the main panel piece. And for this piece, you're going to need 2 cuts of your exterior main fabric, as well as 2 cuts of your interfacing if your fabric needs it. Then for our flap, we want to make sure we have 1 cut of our main exterior piece. I'm only going to use 1 cut of my woven interfacing for my cotton lycra, and then we need 1 cut of our lining fabric. If you want to beef this up as well, you can cut a second piece of your interfacing if you feel it is necessary. Then for your accent pieces, you're going to need 2 cuts of your side panel, 1 cut of your bottom panel, 2 cuts of your main panel accent piece, 2 cuts of your handle connectors, and I am using this pattern piece since I'm using vinyl, and I'm going to cut 4 pieces of my accent piece for the vinyl tab. There is another piece if you're using cotton, so just pay attention to which piece you're using for the material that you are working with for this section. Then for your fusible fleece panels, you're going to cut out 2 of your main panels as your fusible fleece, only 1 of your flat panels. And for these 2, I opted out of doing the side panel since that is going to be a vinyl fabric that I'm using for the exterior. But I do want to try to have it as the bottom piece. Even though I am using vinyl, I'm going to attempt to adhere this fusible fleece onto the bottom of my bottom panel to help beef that up a little bit. And those are the fleece pieces that you're going to need. Out of your lining fabric, you're going to need 2 cuts of your zipper pocket panel, and you're going to need 4 cuts of your lining panel. Then for the cuts that you're going to need that don't have any pattern pieces, you're going to need 2 of your closure straps, 2 of your strap connectors, 2 of your tabs. It is suggested that you use either the lining or some type of cotton material. I would not suggest vinyl, but you do what makes you comfortable. Your strap holders, you're going to need 2 cuts of those. For your handle, you just need 1 cut. And then since I'm doing an adjustable shoulder strap, I did increase the length of this cut to 60 inches since I'm making an adjustable strap. If you're just going to do the basic shoulder, go with the cuts that they provide you in the pattern. Starting on the bag, we're going to start working with the handle. So make sure you have your handle piece, your 2 rectangle rings, your double-sided tape, your ruler, a marking utensil, and a lot of clips. First thing we're going to do is we're going to flip this guy over, and we're going to measure out our center point and draw a line going across our center. Once you have your center marked, you're going to take your double-sided tape and lay that along your center mark once I find my end. And I wouldn't put your double-sided tape all the way to the end. I would stop about an inch, inch and a quarter from each end. That will make sense in a second why we're gonna do that. Then once you have your tape, pull the paper off and fold your raw sides into that center. And if you need to, you can secure it with clips to help hold it into place. Once you have your raw edges folded inward and clipped into place, you're going to take your rectangle rings and just slide them on. I'm going to put it more towards like the center just for this next part. I went in just like 2 clips. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our edges that are not glued down, bring those right sides together this way, lining up the center mark along this short edge, lining that into place, lining the edges up, and clip that. So it should look like this, where you have your folded edges all the way through, your rectangle rings are inside the loop, and your straight edge along here is lined up. And we're going to stitch along this edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Once you have that done, you're going to want to trim up your threads if you have extras at the end like I do. And then we're going to finish clipping the raw edges to the center, going long ways toward, opening this seam up to help make it easier to fold in those raw edges. Now for the next step, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to separate both of these rings. So if you need to, take your clips off and slide everything over. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to have one of these rectangle rings be on one side of the circle to the end. So when we straighten it out, it is like this. But I'm going to move that seam. I'm actually going to flip it this way so you guys can see what I mean. So we have the seam here, and we're going to want to have the seam be close to one rectangle ring, but not like directly on it, kind of like that. So here's our ring and there's our seam. And now what we're going to do is we're going to connect these together, and we're going to have that seam on the bottom side. So you're going to connect both the bottom section and the top section together as one, making our handle. All right, and once we have this, like we are with what we're happy with, we're going to top stitch along this folded edge down here and across here, up here at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, or when you get close to the rectangle rings, go as close as you can get with your presser foot. I'm going to be using a zipper foot for this as well, so I'm going to get pretty close. All right, once you have that done, your handle should look like this, where you have it top stitched along the 4 edges and your seam is hidden in the back close to one of your D-rings, but not like on the D-ring. And now for the next part, you're going to need your 2 handle connectors. And we're gonna do the same thing that we kind of did with this. We're gonna find our center, mark it, and fold our raw edges in. So same thing, mark your center on both, going from short edge to short edge. So that way, not that way, that way. Same thing, zoopy zoop. Take your double-sided tape, tape along that line. This one you can go from edge to edge. You don't have to worry about leaving a gap. peel off your paper and fold your raw edge in toward the center. You can hold it down with clips if necessary, and I think that's what I'm gonna do because I don't trust it. Like that. Raw edges are back here along the center, and we're gonna do the same for the second one. Okay, and now we're gonna do the next two steps over at the sewing machine. I'm just gonna explain them really quick. We are going to top stitch along both of the folded edges, and then once that's top stitched, we're gonna loop your connectors on your rectangle rings, and then we're gonna stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance on the short raw edges, connecting this into place like so. Once that step is done, your handle should look like this, where you have your handle connectors on both sides of the rectangle rings, and you have your main handle in the center. We're gonna set this aside for now. We're gonna come back to it quickly, so don't like chuck it, keep it close. Grab your 2 connector straps, and I went and grabbed a bigger ruler just to help this go by faster, because we're also gonna go through and find our center on both of these. And we're gonna line that, and we're just gonna draw a center mark along the length of our closure straps as well. Once we have our center marked, like that, we're gonna take our double-sided tape and lay that along the center of the mark. You can go from edge to edge. Once you have that done, you can peel up your tape. Oh, yay, it didn't fight me today. And we're gonna fold our raw edges in toward the center like we've been doing for the other couple steps. All right, and then you're gonna have it like this, where you're gonna have your raw edges folded in toward the center and the other side normal. We're gonna repeat that process for the second strap. Find our center. Then once you have that center line marked, we're going to lay double-sided tape along that center line and fold our raw edges in toward the center, like we did on the other strap. Once you have both of your straps situated, we are going to head over to the sewing machine, and we are going to top stitch along those folded edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, just riding our presser foot along both of these folded edges for each of the straps. Once you have both of your connectors folded, you should have the raw edges meeting together on the back and a pretty side on the other. We're going to fold our connector in half, connecting our short edges together. I like to just do a little clip here just to hold that in place because it makes this next step a little easier. You're going to take your handle and your handle connector, have it wrong side down, so have your seam going toward like your table. Take the raw side of your connector, stick it in your little fold in the measurement that it tells you in the pattern, which I'm pretty sure that's it. Oh yeah, look at me go. And then you're going to measure down from your fold what it tells you in the pattern as well. And we're going to bud the connector up to that measurement. And we're going to clip in place. Clip in place, and then we're going to clip along all edges of this connector. And then we're going to repeat the process with the other connector and the other strap. So fold this in half, line up your short edges, clip that into place. Stick your handle in the measurement that it tells you, which I'm going to double check. Booyah. Make sure that fold is nice. Measure down the measurement that it tells you in the pattern and line your handle connector up with that measurement and clip into place as well. Then clip this strap into place as well, connecting the two folds together. All right, and once you have everything connected, clipped, it should look like this. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna head over to the sewing machine and we are gonna stitch down the folded edge across the bottom, up the side, securing the handle into place and securing the two sides together. We're gonna do that for both of the connecting straps. Okay, and once that's done, your straps and handle should look like this, where your connectors are connected inside the fold of your straps. And we are set to move on to the next piece, which is connecting the straps onto the exterior main flap. So to start with this, I suggest finding the center. And I like to find my center by folding my piece in half and taking a very, very small notch out of the top and the bottom. This helps me easily locate my center. You can also do this with a pin or with a marking, but it works for me. And so when that happens, you will have a notch on the top and a notch on the bottom. And this is very small. This is barely even 1/8 of an inch. Then I want you to lay your exterior panel with the top away from you, the bottom towards you. And I want you to take your straps and flip this and have your seam down on top. Now, next thing we want to do is we want to mark the distance that it says on each side of the center. This is going to help us align our strap. So I have my center mark and I have that lined up with my measurement that it tells you in the pattern and on the pattern pieces. And I'm going to do a mark on the one side. I'm going to flip this over, lining up my center with the distance that it tells you in the pattern to go center to the side. Mark that as well. Then I'm going to make another mark where I'm going to measure down the distance that it tells you. And I'm going to draw another line going horizontally this time. So my first mark, I'm marking vertically, lining up where the straps are going to go. And then my horizontal mark I'm going to do is going to mark where our handle is going to go. So I did the one on that side, and I'm going to bring this over, line up my measurement on my mark, measure down, and mark horizontally, showing where I need to align my handle. And now for this, I am also going to take double-sided tape. I knew I had it somewhere. I'm going to take double-sided tape and I'm going to put that tape on the back of each of the straps. This is just going to help me keep everything straight and aligned. I'm only going to do probably like 5 inches of double-sided tape. I do not want to go all the way to the bottom. It's okay if it goes all the way to the top, but it should not go all the way to the bottom. So I did about 4 or 5 inches of double-sided tape on the back side of the strap, and I'm going to do the same on the other. That was actually a lot less, but it's fine. Okay. I am going to take my right handle and I'm going to line that up with our vertical line, showing us the placement of our strap. And in doing so, you will see that when you lay it flat, your handle and handle connector should line up with our horizontal line that we drew. If it doesn't, something went wrong with stitching your connectors into place, which mine lines up just fine. And I'm gonna do a couple clips on the top and the bottom just to help keep this into place. And then on the left hand, my left hand side, I'm going to peel the double-sided tape off of this side as well. And now when we do this side, our handle is gonna pucker up, which it should. It's gonna go like, phew, create a rainbow. And same thing, we're gonna line the top of our handle, the folded side, up at the top, line our strap up with our line, and straighten that out all the way down. And that should line up with our horizontal line that we made for our handle. And then that should be really straight, which it is. I love it. And then we're going to clip that into place, holding that down. Once you have that set, your flap should look like this. Now what I'm going to do is measure up 1.5 inches from the rounded bottom edge, and I am going to do a mark because I'm going to base stitch this into place. Now I'm going to do the mark on my thing, on my exterior fabric, since that'll help me align, and I'm going to do that on both sides. Okay. And what I'm going to use these marks for is I am going to base stitch this into place, holding the strap onto the exterior panel. I'm going to start at the top, go down to my mark, go across, go up, back stitching at the start and the stop. This is just going to hold the straps onto place before we move on and install rivets. All right, now on to installing our rivets. The first rivet we are going to install is going to be right in the center of our handle connector. So take a marking tool and a ruler and mark the center of the handle connector and the center of your strap. That's going to be your first measurement. I'm not sure how well you guys can see that, but it's right there. And then we are going to measure up what it tells you in the pattern and mark the center of that as well. That is going to be where your second rivet is going to be. You're going to do the same on the other side, where you're going to measure up what it tells you to measure up at the bottom, mark your center, and then mark the center of your handle to the center of your strap. And then you're going to take your press, install your hole punch dies, and you're going to punch out those marks that you made. Then you're going to take your rivets, slide those into the holes. Don't throw it across the table. I was worried about the vinyl combination with the fabric, but it looks really nice. I love how cute. So it should look like that. And then I'm going to switch over to my rivet die and set those rivets into place. And then that should look like this when you are done. Now, if you don't have a rivet press or want to use rivets, there is instructions in the pattern on how you're going to sew this section into place. And there are measurements, and the photos show you the perfect way to secure these handle connectors down and to secure the strap onto the main panel. So refer to the pattern for that. The next step that we are going to be working on is going to be for the magnetic snaps. There's also instructions for if you're doing the press lock. I don't have the press lock, so we're doing magnetic snaps. So we're going to work on that next. For the magnetic snaps, you're going to take your vinyl snap tab piece and the pattern piece, and you're going to take 2 of these, put the other 2 to the side. We'll come back to those in a second. Align the pattern piece onto your vinyl, and on the center where it shows your dot, take either a stiletto, an owl, or something. I don't know what that thing is actually called. I'm pretty sure it's an owl. If I'm saying it wrong, please let me know. But you're gonna take that and poke the hole through, showing you where to line your hole. So I got a little hole there, and I'm going to do the same on the other one. I'm going to line it up, stick my stiletto in the hole, like that. Then I'm going to grab my press again. I'm going to take out the rivets die, put those aside, and load in my presser, my hole punch dies. And then I'm going to press the holes out where we have it marked on only 2 of the tab pieces. Not all 4, just 2. Same on the other one. And now my hole punch is getting a little dull, so I have to give it a little extra pizzazz. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to take 1 rivet cap and 1 male end of the snap. We're going to load the male end of the snap on the the female end. You're going to take 1 end of the snap, load that on the pretty end, and take your rivet cap and cap that on the back. You're going to do the same for the second one as well. Take the part of the snap, load that on the pretty end, and cap it on the other end. Then we're going to switch our dies, and we're going to set those 2 into place. For my dies, we have the rivet part that is screwed onto the top, so we don't have to constantly change that one. And then we're going to take, since I'm using the female end of my magnetic snap, I'm going to take the male end of my die and use that to set this into place. Then I'm going to take my press, flip it wrong side up with the female end of the snap on the bottom, load that into place, and snap. And I'm going to do the same on the other side, like that. Now you could do this through both ends of the tab. I just think this area looks better. The next thing that we are going to do is we are going to line both of these, line one of these with the one that we haven't put the press through, clip that into place, like so. Same on the other side. Clip them into place like this, so you have the magnetic snap section on the one side and then a pretty side on the other. And then we are going to top stitch this into place. I like to do this at a 1/4 inch seam allowance so I can trim off any extra after I stitch this into place. I'll show you what I mean once we get it stitched. All right, once you have that set, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take some scissors and we're gonna trim this down to 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, pretty much just flushing up the edges and rounding out that corner. Taking it nice and slow, keeping your curves nice and even, and then rounding out those edges. So what that's going to do is that's going to flush up these edges. Say if you wanted to do some edge coating, you could do that at this point and then put this aside, wait for that to dry, and move on to the next step once these are ready. We're going to do the same to the other side. Smoothed out those edges, smoothed out that curve, and like I said, you could go through and edge coat this at this point before moving on to the next step. For this next step, you're going to take your exterior flap and your 2 magnetic snap tabs, and we are going to go from the center, measure over the amount that it tells you in the pattern, and you're going to line your tab up, taking it right side, which is the pretty one that doesn't have the snap on it, down, facing upwards toward the top of your panel. You're going to take your strap, fold that up out of the way, and line that tab up with that measurement. It should be relatively centered under your flap, and then we're going to clip that raw edge into place like this. So when you're looking at it, it's going to look funky right now, but you see you have your raw edge clipped down at the bottom. Your strap, when folded back, I'm actually going to clip this out of the way. That's going to save us some grief in a minute. Clip your strap up out of your way and make sure that your tab is centered. Since I did trim some off, I am going to slide it a little bit. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, and that's going to look like that, where you have the top of your tab going toward the top of your flat panel, lining up your raw edges along the bottom. We're going to repeat that process on the other side. Fold your strap up out of the way, clip it out of the way if necessary, which for me, it's necessary. Take your ruler and measure over the measurement that it tells you in the pattern. Line up your edge, straightening your tab up. Make sure it kind of is centered. Using your strap as the guide, you kind of just want to make sure that everything is in line. Clip that into place. And then we are going to base stitch this into place at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to reinforce this really hard, just going back and forth a few times. I like to make sure that this has a lot of structure on there, since this part of the bag is what you're going to be tugging on to open and close the bag every time you go in it. So over to the sewing machine we go. Once we are done stitching this on, we are good to move on to the next part of the pattern. If you are using the push locks, you are going to skip the magnetic tab section entirely and just move on to the section that we're on now. For this section, we are going to take our flap interior fabric and attach it to our exterior panel that we have all made and built together. So unclip your straps if you had them clipped like I did, and kind of just like roll them. Actually, I'm going to clip them here. Ha ha ha. I'm going to clip this here to keep it out of the way, since we don't want to sew those over. We're going to smush everything down, and what we're going to do is we're going to create like a pillow, like pew, smush pillow. And we are going to clip these right sides together, so keep your fancy stuff up. And we're going to take our right side of our lining fabric and lay that on top, sandwiching everything down, and line up your sides, clipping into place. All right, once we have that done, you're going to have clipped the U side, keeping this top section open. This is how we are going to turn this right side out and make sure that we have enough room to get everything out. We are going to stitch along this U at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, starting at this side, back stitching really well, going around, up, back stitching here really well, securing everything into place. So let's move over to the sewing machine and stitch this down at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, only going around the U, not the straight edge. Okay, once we have that stitched, what we're going to do is we are going to trim down our seam allowance, and we're going to trim around these curves, making it fold out easy. I'm going to take my pinking shears, and I'm just going to go around these curves, cutting about a 1/2 inch in, I mean a 1/4 inch, sorry, half of the seam allowance, in, not getting too close to my stitches, but enough that this pinking is actually going to make a difference. And I'm just doing that around the curves. Once I get to the tab, I'm gonna roll off, and I know it looks weird, but it'll look pretty when it's done. Same on the other side. I'm actually gonna start at the tab this time. And when I was stitching this into place, I did backstitch along that tab a couple times just to hold that into place. So once you have those cut, we're going to take regular scissors and just trim down the rest of the seam allowance, cutting it in half. Then what we're going to do is turn this right side out. Just pop it out of the hole. Get your hand in there to kind of like press out and roll out these corners, these curves. Now at this point, you could give this a really good press if you want to. My finger press is doing a pretty good job, so I'm probably just gonna leave it go. Yeah, finger press worked fine. And it should look like this, where you have your straps that come down. And now what we're gonna do is we are gonna top stitch along this U, and we're going to close up this opening. We're going to do that at an 1/8 inch seam allowance, folding your straps out of your way. We do not want to sew over those. All right, once you have that closed up, slide that to the side and grab one of your exterior main body panels and mark your centers on the top and the bottom, the same way we've been marking it for the other pattern pieces. Folding in half and notching a tiny little notch on both the top and the bottom, like so. So we'll have the notch up there and the notch down at the bottom. Then I want you to lay the main body panel. If you're using a directional fabric, make sure that you have the direction going the correct way, going towards you. From the top, measure down the measurement that it tells you in the pattern and draw a line going horizontally across your fabric. Then you're going to take your flap right side down, and you're going to line up those center marks, and having the raw edge of your flap line up with the line that we drew, like so. And now if you're using cotton fabric all the way through, you can pin this into place. Since I do have those vinyl straps, I don't feel comfortable doing that, so I'm just going to hold on for dear life and hope it doesn't move as I bring it over here. And what we're going to do once we get over to the sewing machine is we are going to stitch along the raw edge of the flap at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the start and stop, making sure we're tacking this into place really well. Once this is complete, once you have your flap stitched onto your back panel, what we're going to do is we're going to take our flap and flip it over, keeping our back panel as flat as we can, laying this down, and then we are going to top stitch the flap into place along the back panel at a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. If you want to press this right now, you can. Since I have the vinyl straps, I'm not comfortable doing that, but you do what works for you. Then I'm going to head over and I'm going to stitch along the flap ditch at a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, riding along. You may have to use a hump jumper or work with your presser feet to get over these straps. Just do what works for you, take it slow and easy, and you'll be fine. Okay, once we have that done, it is going to look like this. Now, doing that stitch for me is a little difficult. Might be easier for you. I just think that my vinyl was really thick in that area for the strap, so it did cause a couple of areas where I had to like fight to get it through the machine. But we got it. It works. It's good. We are going to set this aside for now and we will come back to it later. For this next part, what we are going to need is our final main exterior panel, our strap holders, and our main accent pieces. For right now, slide the main panel out of your way. We will be coming back to that in a moment. All right, so taking your main accent piece, what we're going to do is we are going to find our center like we've been doing for all of the other like strap pieces. We're going to find our half mark and we're just going to draw a line going across our half. Like so. Do the same on the other main accent piece. Get your center. The pattern does give you the exact measurement for your center for this part. And while we're marking centers, we might as well mark our center for our strap holder as well. So get that, get your center there. There we go. So there's the first one. And then the second one. And then we are going to put double-sided tape along our center marks and fold the raw edges in like we did for the handle and the straps on the flap. So just take that, center that. You can go all the way to the edge on all of these pieces. Then once you have all of these sections taped up, we're going to peel off the paper and fold in the raw edges. If you need to use clips for some extra security holding these in place, go ahead and do so. Surprisingly, this is actually sticking pretty good, so I'm not gonna bother with the clips. Like so. And we're gonna do the same for the strap holders. Like so. Once that's done, you're going to have your two strap holders folded in half with the raw edges on the back, and then your two main body accent pieces, same thing, folded in half with the raw edges in the back center. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take these strap holders and we're going to top stitch along the folded edges at 1/8 of an inch. I'm just going to ride my presser foot along each of the folded edges. And I'm going to do the same thing on the main accent pieces as well. All right, now we're on attaching the accent pieces and the strap holder. The first time making this, I confused myself beyond belief because all I did was look at the pictures and think I figured it out. But I made it way more work for myself after reading it through. Definitely read the pattern, guys. Don't just look at the pictures. I realized that I made it way harder than I needed to. So to help avoid you guys from doing what I did, we're going to do it the way the pattern suggests, reading. So to do this, we're going to find our center mark of our final back main panel. For that, I'm just going to fold in half and clip. All right, once we have our 2 center notches set, we're going to take the measurement that it tells you in the pattern to measure from each side of your center mark. So line that up and draw a vertical line going from top to bottom at that measurement. And we're going to do the same on the other side. And once you have those marks, it should look like that. Then we're going to take our main accent piece and line that up with your line. So my line is going here. I'm going to take the right side of my accent piece and line that up with my line, holding that here. What you can do is use some double-sided tape and go along the back. As we can tell, I like using my double-sided tape whenever I can. So take that, and I'm going right along the center. So this is not going to get in any of my stitches or anything like that. It's just going to hold this into place. And I'm going to actually do that on the other one so that then I can just place it like this, and rip. Okay, perfect. So then we're going to take the paper off of the double-sided tape if it wants to rip. Me and double-sided tape have a love-hate relationship. I love it, but I swear it hates me because it makes my life so much more difficult when it doesn't peel up correctly. Anywho, so take your accent piece and take your right side of your accent piece and line that up with the line that you drew. Lining that right along there, smushing that into place. So my line is here and my accent piece butts right up next to that line. And we're going to do the same on the left side. We're doing the same on the other side. I just got my lefts and rights totally messed up. And we're going to peel the tape off of this side. But now the difference is on this side, we're going to line the left side of the accent piece up with our marking. So just butt that up, smoosh along like that. So both of your lines should be toward the center and your accent piece goes toward the outer. Line is here, accent pieces on the outside. And now this is the part where I made it confusing. It really isn't confusing if you just read the pattern. If you try to look at the pictures and guess it, you're gonna have problems because I did the same thing. I made it work, but I made it 10 times harder for myself. You don't need to make it that hard. From here, you're gonna mark up the measurement that it tells you in the pattern to go up. So I'm gonna do that. And I'm gonna mark this on my exterior fabric, not on my accent, since everything I'm marking on the accent I can't see anyway. So gonna mark this here on both sides, and I'm gonna do the same on the other accent. Mark, mark. Then once that's set, we are going to take our accent piece, and we're gonna do this the way that it's not hard. We're gonna take our raw edge and fold that under a 1/4 inch and line that up on top of our accent piece. And if you have a pin, pin that into place. I don't know how I'm gonna do this because I don't have a pin. I think I'm just gonna do this one at a time. So I'm going to take this like how this is, taking my 1/4 inch, folding that under, and then lining my raw edge of my strap holder up with the the folded edge. It's not raw anymore, it's folded. The folded edge of my strap holder, and line that up with the edge of my accent piece on the mark that it that we marked. And I'm going to stitch this into place, going over the folded edge, stitching this on, following along the top stitch that we previously had. So that's what we're going to do, since I don't know how else to hold this into place. Okay, so that went really well. I did use my stiletto to help hold that because that was just way too close for me to feel comfortable. Now, this is the side that we're going to find out if it's a lot easier. What we're going to do is we're going to take the other raw edge, fold that under 1/4 inch as well, and line that folded edge up with our edge of our accent piece. And then it should bow up. We should be creating another little rainbow like we did with the handle. And we're going to take this back over to the sewing machine, and we're going to stitch this on in place, lining that up with our line the same way that we did on the other side. I have 2 little like threads that I'm just like, go away, go away. Okay, we're good. So yeah, fold this over, line it up with your line the edges up with each other, and then we're going to stitch this into place, holding that down and creating a little rainbow for our finger to go in. It's going to end up being the strap, but you got to make sure you can get stuff under there. So we're going to do that, and we're going to stitch that into place. Okay, so verdict. That was definitely way easier than what I did last time. So same thing for the other edge. I'm kind of just going to zoom through this one, but I'll talk as I'm doing it. So we're going to take our strap holder, fold in a raw edge about 1/4 inch, and we're going to line that folded edge up with our edge of our main accent piece, keeping it in line with our mark that we made. We're going to stitch this into place on the one side. Then we're going to repeat that on the other side, folding the other raw edge of the strap holder under by 1/4 inch, lining that up with the accent piece, creating a little rainbow in the center, and stitching that side on as well. I'm going to do most of this over at the sewing machine. Once you have that stitched on, we're going to mark our placement for our magnetic snaps. So measure up the measurement they tell you in the pattern and poke the holes out using your rivet press. I had to change my die again, so ding the counter. Poke out those holes and lock in the male section of your magnetic snaps. Change the die again, and we're going to set those into place using the opposite side of the rivet press. Once that's set, it should look like this, and now we're going to move on to the next piece, connecting our side connectors onto our side panel. For this section, we're going to mark down our center of our connectors the way we've been doing with everything, finding our center using double-sided tape and folding the raw edges in toward the center. Once you have both of the connector holders with their raw edges folded inward, grab one of your connecting hardware, and what we're going to do is we're going to fold the raw edges on the back to meet in the center, holding those down with double-sided tape. Then, to measure the placement for where these connectors go on the side panel, you can either use the measurement that is in the pattern or the spot that is laid out on the pattern piece to center both of these connectors on their side panels. Once you have these on their sections on the panels, we're going to head over to the sewing machine and sew them into place. Now from here, I like to add rivets onto these connectors just to add that little bit of extra support. The pattern doesn't call for it. It's probably not necessary. I like using rivets, let's be honest. So I'm going to pop in my hole punch dies again. I wonder if I should put a counter for how many times I had to change my dies throughout this bag making process, but it's fine. It's gonna look pretty. It's beautiful. So you could measure and find your center. I'm just gonna eyeball and smoosh. Same on the other side. Find my center. And smoosh. And then take my rivet and smoosh. Pop that through the hole. Lose my cap. There we go. Then switch out my dies again and put in my rivet dies and then snap the rivets into place. Like so. Now all of our exterior pieces are assembled. Now we get to build our exterior. So set your side panels off to the side. We will be needing them again shortly. For building the main exterior, you're going to need your bottom, your front, and your back with your attached flap. Oh no! I forgot to add my tag. Okay, before we do that, we're adding our tag onto our bottom because I forgot to add it onto the flap. Darn it! Okay. So before we build, we are going to add our tag that I forgot. And I'm going to put that in the center, in between the magnetic snaps and the strap holders. So I'm going to measure that. Grab more double-sided tape and double-side tape that to help hold that into place. Dum dum dum. Dum dum dum. On the last one I made, if you want to do it yourself and do it the way I did the first time, before you put the interior piece of your flap on, take your flap, measure 2.5 inches up from the bottom center and put your label there. It looks really good there, but I forgot that and I'm not going to do that now, so I'm going to put it here. And from here I'm measuring 4 inches up, lining up my center, and that is where I am going to put my tag. That'll still look cute. Yeah, that'll still look cute. Make sure you don't put the tag upside down. And center, like so, and stitch that into place. I'm just going to zoom through that, not even going to bother bringing it back over to the sewing machine for that. Okay, now that you have all of your exterior pieces and you didn't forget to put your tag where you wanted to put it, take your exterior front panel and your bottom panel, come here, bottom panel, and line those up right sides together, aligning the bottom edge, and clip that into place. Once you have your bottom panel clipped onto your front exterior panel, we're going to sew this bottom clipped raw edge at 1/2 inch seam allowance. It's almost like you're going to ride up next to your foam if you got that centered on correctly. So let's go sew. Once you have that section stitched, you're going to fold down your bottom panel, putting the seam back on the bottom panel, and then we are going to top stitch along this section at 1/8 inch seam allowance, riding your presser foot right along the ditch that you just created. And we're going to top stitch that into place. All right, and then once we have that stitch, we're going to repeat the same process onto the other main exterior panel. So take that, lay that right side up, take your bottom panel, lay that right side down, center it along the raw edges, clip into place, And then we are going to stitch this raw edge again at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, connecting the bottom panel to the, what's that? That's the back panel. While I was at the sewing machine, I did also fold my seam allowance out, bent my seam allowance under the bottom panel, and tops stitched that into place. And now we get to prep the exterior pieces. Since this is going to be a drop-in lining, we have to make sure that we fold our exterior pieces in. We're not going to hold them there for now. We're just going to get it prepped, so when we have to put the lining in and line those seams up, it's going to be a lot easier to do if we prep it now and do it later. So to do this, there were 2 different ways. There's way 1, where you measure down the 1/2 inch, fold it, press it with an iron, and unfold it, holding that crease to hold your spot. Or, me and my double-sided tape again, are going to cheat and do it this way. So I have a 1/2 inch double-sided tape, and I am going to line both of my raw edges of my top panels only, not the flap. Flap not important right now. So just this top panel and this top panel. I'm going to take my 1/2 inch tape, and I am just going to run that along the top raw edge of my panels. And this is what I'm going to use to fold down my exterior edges when the time comes to fold it down. So we're going to do that on the one side. We're going to do that on the other side. Fold the flap out of the way. The flap is not important right now. Line that along there. And it's okay if the tape doesn't go all the way to the edge, because now after we do this, we have to put the side panels on, and that's kind of going to go into the seam allowance anyway. So do with that information what you see fit. Fight with a double-sided tape so it doesn't cause anything to crease at the same time. Okay. Like so. All right. And then once you have your double-sided tape on, oh, that's creased. Okay, got it. Once you have your double-sided tape on, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to find the center of our bottom panel. I like to just fold this in half, lining up my seams here, and then taking a scissor and doing a tiny little snip in the corner. And then do the same on the other side. Line up your seams, straighten that out, and snip a tiny bit in the corner. Okay. Then we have that set. We're going to grab our side panels, and we're going to mark the center on the bottom of our side panel as well. Fold that in half. Unless you did this in the previous step where we were attaching the side connectors. Since we used the pattern piece, we didn't have to find the center at that point. Snip. Same on the other one. This is looking really cute. I was very nervous about if this vinyl would go well with this, and I think it looks magical. Haha, get it? Magical? Harry Potter. Okay. I'm back to being normal for like 5 minutes. I'll go back to crazy in a little bit. Okay, and then on this section, we're going to do the same thing. We are going to we're going to take our double-sided tape, and we're going to put the 1/2 inch double-sided tape right along the top edge of our side panels. Same thing, it does not have to go all the way to the edge because the seam allowance is going to take some of that tape. Like so. Now the next thing we're going to do is we are going to attach these side panels to to the main panel. If you've made the net, it's kind of the same way you attach that side panel. So we're going to start from the center, right sides together. Grab your clips, you're going to need a lot of them. Line up those center marks. Clip into place. I like to start from one edge, clip all the way up, and then go to the other edge and clip all the way up. So, grab clips and start clipping away. I like to pick up my piece and kind of have it have the exterior wrap around the side panel instead of having the side panel morph to go around your exterior, if that makes sense. I don't know if it does. All right, once you have that clipped in place, it should look like this. Everything should line up good at the top, should go down to the bottom really nicely. And now what we're gonna do is we are gonna head over to the sewing machine and we're gonna stitch along this U at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. We're not sewing the top, we're just going the U all the way down. Okay, once that's done, you are going to repeat the same to the other side. I did go through and had to refix a seam allowance when I was coming out of the curve. My sewing machine just wanted to fight me, but it's fine. So we are going to do the same on the other side. Take your other side panel, line up your center on the bottom panel, clip that into place. Clip. And I like to clip all of the bottom panel before I start fighting with the sides. I like to move my front and back panel and have that kind of morph to go on the side panel as opposed to doing it the other way. So I'll take my front panel and kind of wrap it around the side. And then once you have that clipped, it should look like this. And then we're going to stitch along this U at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, making sure that when we're on the side with the flap, I forgot to mention this earlier, you don't hit your flap. We don't want to sew in our flap. Our flap needs to go flappy flap. Can't do that if it gets sewed in a seam. So we're going to stitch along this U at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, so my phone died when recording that, but we stitched that up the same way as we did the other side. Now that we have both sides stitched up, what we're going to do is, I'm just going to stick that flap in there. We don't need it right now. We are going to trim these seams, cutting them in half, making them a 1/4 inch wide. So now we get to trim. You can use pinking shears around the curves if that's something you would like to do. I'm just gonna cut it with regular scissors. I don't see the need to pink it, so snip, snip, snip. All right, so we have those seams completely clipped. What we can do now is we can turn this right side out, kind of giving us a little sneak peek of what the bag is gonna look like. Oh, that is looking so freaking cute. And I know right now it looks kind of funky when you do the snap. I kind of saw that last time and I was like, ooh, that's weird. But these are going to get pushed in and it is going to look so cute. Let's see, those work really well. Oh, those look so nice. And actually putting the tag down there wasn't bad. It definitely does look really cute up on the flap, but having it down in the center works fine too. Okay, so now we're going to put the exterior to the side and we're going to start working on the interior. Okay, so the first step of the lining is we have to prep our zipper tape. So we're going to take our zipper tabs, get rid of your label, take one tab, lay it right side down, right along the raw edge of your zipper. Clip that into place. Then repeat the same on the other side, right side down, lining it with the short edge of your zipper, and clip into place. Once the two sides are clipped, we're going to head over to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch this down at a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. That is different from the pattern. It does tell you something different, so whichever way works for you, do that. I'm going to do it this way, stitching along the short raw edge at a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once that is set, you are going to take, let's do one side at a time. You're going to take one side, flip it up, then we're going to turn it over and take this raw edge, fold it down to meet your top edge, and then take that section and fold that down so that then all raw edges meet, encasing this zipper into place. And clip. Same on this side. We're going to fold that up like so, flip it around, take this raw edge, fold that down to meet, and then fold that down again, meeting those raw edges. And now, since I am doing this way, my zipper tape is an inch longer than what the pattern asks you to do. So keep that in mind when choosing which method you want to do. Now we're going to take this back to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch along these folded edges, closing up the back fold and top stitching the top, making it pretty. So let's go do that. Once you are all set, you will have your zipper tab securely onto your zipper. Double check your zipper size and make sure it's the correct size that it does say in the pattern. Since I did add the zipper tabs on my way instead of the way that it is in the pattern, my zipper tape already measured the size that I needed. If you're doing it the way in the pattern, make sure that your zipper tape with the tabs now measures the correct size that is needed to move forward. Once you've checked and you're all good, move your zipper tape out of the way. We don't need it right now. Now we are going to work on our lining pieces. And I know there are a couple ways to do darts. This is the way I'm going to do it. This is not 100% to the pattern. I think I'm only off by, my way is I cut these darts out. The way in the pattern is you don't cut the darts out, you stitch on that dart line. So whatever way works for you, I did it this way on my last bag and it worked fine. So you do what works for you. So for this section, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to prep the top of each piece. Yes, I did cut a little bit of my selvage. You're never going to know because that part gets folded, which is what we're prepping now. So I am again going to use double-sided tape since it works a lot easier for me than folding and pressing. So I have a 1/4 inch double-sided tape, which is what we're going to fold our lining down. Our exterior is a 1/2 inch, our interior is a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to take my 1/4 inch double-sided tape and I'm going to run that right along the edge of all of my interior pieces, inside, working on the inside now. Reap. And same thing, it does not need to go all the way into the edge because there is going to be a seam allowance and that's just going to get caught in the seam allowance. So there is the one, and I'm putting this tape on the wrong side of my fabric. So for the next one, I'm going to flip, line it along the top. I'm leaving about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch gap on each edge, just to make sure it's not like in my seam allowance. Like so. Along that edge, move that to the side. Same with this one. Smooth it out. That one's good. And then on to the final one. So, okay, so now that we have all of these edges prepped for when we're going to turn the edges over, next thing we're going to do is we're going to prep the darts. And now my way is a little different than the pattern. The pattern doesn't have you cut out the dart section. It has you fold on that dart placement and stitch. For me, I taught myself how to do darts the way where you cut out the dart area and then you line it up and stitch it at 1/8 of an inch. Whatever way works for you. I did it this way on my last bag and it turned out perfectly fine. So I'm going to continue doing it that way. If you want to do it the way where you mark the darts, fold and pinch on that line and stitch directly on that line, go ahead, do that. But for me, I cut out the darts for each of my sections and I'm going to fold them right sides together, lining up where I cut the dart out, and clip that into place. I'm just going to do 2 clips, one there. Actually, no, 1 clip is fine. 1 clip works. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side. I'm going to take the dart, right side together, line up where I cut, and clip. Is this the correct way to do darts? Probably not. I did teach myself how to sew, and that's how I taught myself how to do it. If it's right, I don't know. Does it work? Yes. And we're going to do that for the other 3 pieces. And there are all 4 darts. Now, I'm going to bring everything over to my sewing area, and I'm going to stitch along that cut edge, but I'm going to do it at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. If you were doing this according to the pattern and probably the correct way to do darts, you would just sew on those dart placement lines, just directly down that dart placement line, not having any issues. Since I'm not doing that, I'm going to sew at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, riding my presser foot along the raw edge that I have cut out. Okay, now that we have all of our darts sewn, whichever method you did, you're going to take 2 of your panels and we are going to set these aside. We will come back to them later. And what we're going to do is we're going to mark our center along the top. So we're going to fold in half, line up edge to edge, and do a tiny little snip. Take some scissors. Tiny little snip. Do not go more than your tape. Same on this one. Fold it in half. Tiny little snip. Not bigger than your tape. This is going to be your center marking, which we are going to take our zipper and we're going to do the same. And now with zipper tape, I'm going to also trim up this zipper tab to make it the same size as my zipper tape. Now, with working with zipper tape, if you've ever cut into zipper tape, you will notice that it will unravel if you don't melt the edge. So even though we are going to mark our center the same way that we marked the center for everything else, we're going to melt where we mark that center. So tiny little snoop. Same on the other side. Make sure everything lines up. Tiny little swoop. Grab a lighter, big lighter, and melt. Okay. Now, if you are not comfortable cutting into the zipper tape, there is another way for you to mark where the zipper tab goes, which is using the lining piece. There is a section that when you lay that on your piece, you can mark that line on the one side and the same line on the other side. Or there's a third method. If you want to mark where things go, there are measurements in the pattern that tell you how far on each side of the center the zipper tape should lay. So you lay it however works for you. I like doing my notches and burning the heck out of the center, so I'm going to do it that way. Once you have the zipper tab measured, marked, or if you're marking it on your lining, once you're all set, let me move one of these out of the way. You're going to take your zipper tape, zipper teeth facing down on top of your lining that's right side up. So right side lining up, zipper tab, zipper tape laying down, line up your center marks, and we are going to clip that into place. Like this. It should not go all the way to your edges. You should have a decent gap. The pattern does tell you what this gap should be in case you're curious. Now, when we're on this step, we have two options. We can either A, take it over to the sewing machine like this and base stitch that section on, or we can live dangerously and take our lining piece, our zipper pocket lining piece, and lay that on, and then stitch it in place. I like to create a zipper sandwich, less running back and forth to the sewing machine, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my zipper pocket piece, lay that right side down on my lining piece, having the zipper sandwiched in between, and I'm just going to line this up with my zipper tape. That'll be centered, and just line everything up. So once you have that clipped, it should look like this, where you have your zipper panel right side down, your zipper tape right side down, then your lining main panel right side up. And what we're going to do is we are going to bring this over to the sewing machine and we are going to stitch this down at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, only going from tab to tab. Do not go past where your zipper is. Once you have that set, what we're going to do is we are going to flip the lining fabric for the zipper panel out, give that a nice good finger press, and then we're going to take that and flip this way, giving that a nice press. What you can do at this point, if you would like, you could peel off your double-sided tape, which on these panels, I actually don't think the double-sided tape is necessary. So for the next one, no double-sided tape on these pieces. Press that down. Press that down to get a nice crisp edge. Fold that down. So you're going to have the lining panel of the zipper pocket, wrong side with your main lining panel. And we're going to have the zipper tape here. We're going to pull the zipper tape to create a nice crisp edge here, and then we're going to top stitch from zipper tab to zipper tab, just right there, at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, just riding our presser foot right along the ditch. It may help to pull the zipper tab zipper tape as you are stitching to help keep that line crisp, but don't like tug it so much that you get like wonky lines. Use your best judgment. Keep your line straight. Keep everything nice and tight. Even check under. Make sure you're pulling that lining out, like pulling the lining toward the bottom of your other lining to keep everything straight. So let's do that. Okay, and once that is top stitched, we're going to repeat the process with the other side. We're going to take the other lining panel piece, lay that right side up. Take our zipper, which now has all this on it, lay this right side down, lining up the center marks. We're going to clip into place. Then we're going to take our other zipper pocket panel piece, lay that right side down, and place that on top of your zipper, lining up center to center. Since we have the other pocket panel piece, I like to just line that up with that, ensuring that it's straight and looks good. And it does look like my zipper tab is slightly bigger than it should be. That's not going to cause an issue, but it's going to look like this. Then I'm going to do the next 2 steps over at the sewing machine, where I'm going to sew this into place. I'm going to flip everything right side out like this, and then I'm going to top stitch that side of the zipper down. I'm going to do those 2 steps over at the sewing machine. All right, once that is done, you're going to have both sides of your zipper pocket top stitched down with your zipper pocket panel piece on the inside. We're going to take our zipper pocket panel piece and put that right side together. I'm sticking my finger in where the zipper tab is and pushing downward like that. And we're going to clip all 3 of these raw edges into place, lining all the raw edges up. Gonna line up my notches here, push my zipper out, line that side up, clipping into place. And then this edge should line up pretty well on its own, but we're going to clip that as well. What we're going to do now is we are going to stitch these 3 sides together, going at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, securing all of that on. I like to stitch right under the zipper tab, going down to the 1/4 inch and then following that for my seam allowance, just to secure this, since my last bag, when I did this next section, it didn't actually close up that hole. I don't think it tells you to do that in the pattern, but I am going to do it that way. So do with that information what you see fit. Let's go stitch. All right, once that is set, you have a functioning pocket. It is closed up all the way through, can't get a hole out, and we are all set. Now we get to move on to attaching the other 2 lining pieces. I like to do this step all at once and then sew it all together at the machine, so that's what we're going to do. Grab your other 2 lining pieces, take 1 lining piece, and lay it right side down on top of one of your lining pieces. That's going to be right side up. And we're going to line up the darts, having your seams go in opposite directions. So I'm going to have my top seam go to the right, my bottom seam go to the left. And then I'm going to clip into place. Like that. Go to the other dart. It does help if you push the one dart going the wrong way. It does help make it easier to line up. So then we're going to do the top. This seam wants to go to the left, so it'll go to the left, and I'll have the other seam go to the right, and I'm going to nest those 2 together like so. And now we're just going to clip up the other edges. This side going down, that side, and this side. Just on the one. Keep this other one. We don't care about that one right now. Move that one. And once you have that, we're going to do the same on the other side. take your other lining panel, pop the darts going the wrong way, lay it right side together over your other lining piece, nest your seams into place, having one seam go in one direction and then the other seam go in the opposite direction. Clip. And then we're going to clip up those three sides as well. All right. And once that's done, you're going to have this where you have your two lining panels clipped together, your pocket panel just dangling in the wind. And what we're going to do now is we are going to stitch the U's on both of the lining pieces only, not that pocket panel. Let that guy just hang out there. We're going to stitch along the U's at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, starting from one end of the U, loop it around, bring it up to the top, stopping here. Then on the other panel, start at the top, loop it down, go around, bring it back up, and stop at the top. So let's go do that. Now that we have this sewn, we can go through and trim our seam allowance down to a 1/4 inch if you would like. Yeah, I think I'm going to. So I'm just going to cut this seam in half because we did sew it at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. All right, now that that is all set, what we're going to do is we are going to peel off our double-sided tape from our lining piece, and we are going to fold our lining edge down a 1/4 inch, which is pretty much the size of my double-sided tape anyway. So we're going to just line that and fold. It should pretty much match with the seam allowance that you have on your zipper. So just take that and fold it down like so. And then we're going to do the same on the other side. And then your lining is complete. Now with this lining, you can zhuzh it up a bit by putting like extra slip pockets in there or another like zipper pocket on one of the other lining sides, whatever floats your boat. On the bag that I did originally, the first one I did, I added in some slip pockets and it worked out great. It did add more steps, and as you see, this is a pretty long bag. So just keep that in mind when deciding what other elements you're going to add onto this bag. So now we get to do the drop lining. So we're going to move our lining to the side and we're going to grab our exterior. Once we have our exterior, we are going to peel off the double-sided tape and fold our exterior down that 1/2 inch. I like to kind of just open the seams. I think that does help. And then I'm going to open the seam up and fold it down. And now in this section, I am going to clip it too because my accent piece is a little on the thicker side. So I'm gonna do that where I'm gonna fold that down and then I'm gonna take the accent piece, fold that down and clip it into place. That is definitely a problem I did not have on the first bag because for those accent pieces on the front and the flap of the bag, I used webbing instead of the double folded vinyl. So it did make it a little thicker. Again, another thing to keep in mind when picking your materials for this bag, that those accent pieces get bulky. With using the double-sided tape, it really does help get that accurate 1/2 inch as I'm folding this down, because all I'm doing is I'm folding it along the double-sided tape. I'm not guessing, I'm not sitting there measuring and making sure that it folds right up to my line. I am just taking my double-sided tape and I'm folding around that. So that really does help. Okay, and then once you have your exterior folded, you're going to take your lining and stick it in the hole, basically. Then you're gonna line up your edges. You're gonna take your seam and line your interior seam up with the seam of your side panel. So working with the back section only, I'm gonna ignore the front for a second. We're gonna clip with the seam here. Fold that guy out of the way. I'm gonna clip like that. And I'm only gonna clip the back section with the back section of this lining panel. Not gonna worry about the zipper or the front, ignore that for now. And we're gonna clip all the way over to the other side seam, stopping when we get to that other side seam. Okay, and once you get that, you're gonna have side seam to side seam, and it's gonna look like this, where this whole section is clipped and then everything else is kind of just hanging out. I want you to repeat that same process on the front. So flip it, take your side seam, line it up with the side seam of your exterior and clip into place. And then go all the way along the front, just worrying about this front piece here. Nothing else matters. Then once you have that clipped, it's gonna look like this, where you got both of these sides all nice, but you have these gaps over here. So what you're gonna do is, you're gonna wanna clip it in, I wanna say about 1 inch to 1.5 inches at the most. Like that, where you're still gonna have the gap, but you have it where it's not like a huge gap, like over there. We're gonna do the same on this side. So again, you have the little gap, but nothing too big. And what we're gonna do now is we are gonna stitch from gap to gap. So we're gonna start, we'll start here, stitch all the way down to this gap, and then we're gonna stop, back stitch. Then we're gonna jump over to this gap, start, stop, start here, back stitch really tight, bring that all the way around, up to this gap, stop, back stitch really good. And then we're gonna have one more thing after that. All right, I'm starting at the one gap. All right, we're back at the other gap. So we're gonna back stitch, closing that, switch over to the other side, back stitch and go across. And then just back stitch. And now we're gonna go back over to the workspace. All right, now that we have that top stitched, everything looks really good. We gotta close up these gaps over here. And how we're gonna do that is, we are going to take our side piece and we are gonna push that in to our zipper tab. Right? Yeah, hold on. It's being weird. We're gonna take our side piece, push it in to our zipper tab, and fold the side piece inward. Like this. And we're gonna clip this in place. Like that. We're gonna do the same on the other side. So it's gonna look like that once we're clipped. And now what we're gonna do is we are gonna top stitch from the curve up to our zipper top stitch. So right along this section. And then the bag will be done. All right, once you get your zipper under the presser foot, you want to make sure that you have the lining, you have your exterior side piece, and then your lining on the other side. And we're going to stitch from top stitch to top stitch. Okay, perfect. If you have any threads that you need to trim up, go ahead and trim those up now. Perfect. And technically the bag is done. The only thing left that we have to do is add on the shoulder strap, which is really quick to do. So we're gonna bang that out real quick. All right, for the shoulder strap, which I'm making a crossbody strap, we are going to need our crossbody strap, our 2 swivel hooks, our adjustable slider, and 4 rivets. We're also going to need our rivet press with our rivet dies and our hole press dies. So let me switch this over to the hole press die. All right, now that we have our hole die press in, we're going to take one side of our strap, grab our adjustable slider, slide our strap through the slider, up the center, over the center bar like that. So we have the bar in the center and we have our webbing on the outside. I like to have my webbing come out about 1 inch to 1.5 inches, and we're going to do 2 rivets on this section. Just eyeball it, keep it centered, keep it tight. And with webbing, anytime you make a cut or a hole, you melt it. Melt. Same on the other side. Melt. That's going to keep it from unraveling. And then I'm going to clip my 1 rivet in before I make my next hole. Clip. Same on the other. And slip the rivet in the hole. Rivet. So now we have that on and our slider is here. Next, what you're going to do is you are going to lay, move. You're going to lay your slider with the rivet side up, with like the fold side up, keeping it straight. Take one of your hooks, do it right side down. So when you're over here, you're going to have your clasp going outward, and this is going to fold over your rivet section like this. Then you're going to take your open end, go up, grab this, go in. And what that did was encase this clasp in your little whoop. Then you're going to take your other clasp, keeping this nice and straight. You're going to take your clasp and have it go up, slide it on, so it's like this, and then take 1 to 1.5 inch of the webbing, slide it on, and put 2 holes to put the last 2 rivets. There we go. And anytime we make a hole or a cut in webbing, we melt it so it doesn't fray over time. And then stick your rivet through, clip, and then one more time. Now, to set these rivets into place, we're going to switch over to our rivet die. And then we're just going to set these rivets into place. those are set. And then for this one, we're just going to pull this back, exposing those rivets, and set those two. And ta-da! Our strap is done. Now we're going to move on to the final review of the bag. All right, and the bag is finished. It turned out so cute. This is such a functional bag, and even though there are some parts that might be a little challenging and a little intimidating, depending on what type of material you are using, you got this. You can do it. You can do it. It went together so nicely. It is so functional. You can even zhuzh this bag up some more if you want to do like strap ends on the end of this, which if I do end up getting some bronze strap ends, I might do that. I might add that on. There are tons of different adaptations. Like if you don't want to do these magnetic snaps, you could do push locks. That'll be so cute. If you want to add some more pockets or interior features like zipper pockets, slip pockets, you could do that on this bag. The zipper pocket is an awesome size. This bag is just functional. For example, my mother-in-law is very picky on bags. She needs that center divide, and she needs to make sure that she has a spot for everything in her purse, because that woman, I swear, she carries around an entire house. And when she saw this bag, she loved it. She actually had me make her my first one that I used for my testing. And it looks like this. I used webbing for the exterior accent pieces and the handle. It came out so nice. I did it as the shoulder strap as well. For her, I put some purse feet on the bottom. I added her strap ends on that. And now putting these strap holders on the front, I didn't do them the correct way, which is why this one likes to get stuck. So make sure you do it according to the pattern so you don't have that problem. But for her lining, I went through and I added slip pockets to make sure she had a spot for everything that she carries. And she already has claimed the bag. She claimed it before I even finished it. So this pattern is beautiful. There are tons of different fabric combinations you can do. There are tons of different fabric weights you can do. Just keep in mind, the thicker the fabric you use for these accent pieces, the harder certain section of the bag are going to be. Moving forward, I do not think I'm going to do vinyl for this section here. I think that was a little too thick when putting the back section on and when doing the top stitching for putting the lining and the interior together. So I don't think for those pieces I'm going to use vinyl moving forward. That could just be me. It might be better if I try it another way. I do love the idea of having the snap tabs in the magnetic snaps. I also haven't used push locks before, so that might be something I have to try. If that's something that you would be interested in seeing how to do the push lock version on this, please let me know so I will know that people are interested in seeing it. I am loving this bag. This pattern is from Swoon and their patterns are just beautiful. I haven't had one bag from them that I have not liked making. So I highly recommend them. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys would like to support the channel, best ways to do that are to subscribe, like, comment, and I did just create a Patreon if anyone would be interested in joining that. I plan on having behind the scenes photos and little snippet tutorials like for the Demi wallet. Someone was looking to see if I could do that as a magnetic snap version instead of doing the turn lock. When I make that video, I'm going to post that on Patreon since it'll be a quick video that YouTube probably wouldn't benefit having. I plan on doing giveaways with Patreon eventually. I plan on going through and sending out merchandise after a certain amount of time of joining Patreon. Another perk that I am going to have for Patreon members is at the end of each video, I'm going to have a card that's going to pop up everybody who subscribes, which will be cool if you want to see your name featured at the end of the videos. So if that is something that you guys would be interested in doing, the link is going to be in the description below. Please check it out. If not, don't worry about it. Liking, subscribing, and commenting do tons. Other than that, there's not really much to go on with. This bag came out beautifully. If you guys are interested, do check out the Patreon. I will have this bag up on my Etsy because this one has already been claimed. I'll have this one up on my Etsy by, I'm gonna shoot for Wednesday the 29th. That is my deadline. I have to give myself those or I'll never put it up. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. I do really appreciate it, and I hope to see you guys next week. Bye!